Chapter 1. You've not read to the end of a chapter.
I'm give my
He hangs around with Muslims too much. Now, come on, literally.
Read to the end of the book.
It's okay. I got it.
I'll give a fourth one, which is
totally out of context.
No, it's okay.
Okay, this one chills my blood. If a priest ordered Leviticus 21:9, if a priest daughter defiles herself by becoming a sinner, she disgraces her father and she must be burned alive. Are you okay with that?
Sure thing.
Okay, great. Thank you. That was very clear answers. Now you can explain to me your rationale. But just to recap, people, you're okay with kill a member of your own family worshiping God, kill anyone with a different religion. Anyone working on Sunday should be put to death, which seems to include you, but I could be wrong. And burning women alive if they don't act in a very, very
specific way. Sure.
And great, you're happy with all that's great. Now,
awesome.
Tell me how that is compatible with treat other people the way you want to be treated.
Easy.
Great.
We are not literalists, right? And yes, these practices were mandated either by the Levitical priest, by Moses, or by God himself. Absolutely sure thing. Now, what you need to understand is that the Old Testament and the New work together synergistically very well. What we are seeing in the Old Testament is a development of a people who have been charged with God for a specific purpose. They are meant to be the light to the Gentiles, the people by which, through their teachings and their works that come from God, the entire world will come to know the true God. And as you can see, we have Christianity, which is a Jewish religion that stems from Judaism. What you're seeing there is them being made perfect. As in, they are in a land where their fellow neighbors are all committing all kinds of insane way. I'm just not going to worship anymore. The idea here is that they're going to go and join the Amalekites or the Moabites or some people. Or some people.
Suddenly you guys are on the same team.
We're not, because they believe in executing private apostates.
No, that's not true.
If someone becomes an atheist, it's a problem. That's not what we're saying. We're saying that if you go and join. If you go and join groups that participate in child sacrifice, in blood, let me finish because you read the points. You want the explanation. That is what the answer is about. If you're performing some kind of public apostasy where you're not simply saying I don't believe in Yahweh and that's it, but you now want to go and join the Moabites and their idol worship and all the ramifications that come with those that will unfortunately corrupt the children of Israel and the mission that they're given, then yes, your life is forfeited. Are we meant to do that today? No, we're not, because most people here are not ancient Jews. Okay? In Jesus Christ, the law and the prophets has been fulfilled, completed. So now our perfection comes from Christ and no longer by observing these laws. They were necessary for a time, and that is the biggest difference between what you might have read within Islam and what you have in Christianity. Not all of these commands are permanent. They are covenants for a time. That is all the case might be. Now, no matter what you read, kill all the donkeys, kill all the children, kill your husband, kill your wife, whatever the case might be. We're not saying that God here is showcasing his morality. He is passing his judgment that stems from his love.
Can I comment at any point?
Go ahead. There you go.
Good word. He's not showcasing his morality, but he's passing judgment.
Yes.
I'm not sure I see the clear blue
I'm
water
leaving.
between
Sorry,
those two.
I must say something before I go. Oliver. Sorry, go ahead. Is that Oliver? What? Oliver Twist? Or sorry. Tony, sorry. Tony is a very nice gentleman. He accepted my wish.
I've hijacked your conversation.
Because they have to continue with this.
Because I like to stay
at any time.
Respect. However,
no, please. At any time, if you want to go back in. Sorry, I didn't mean to hijack you.
We'll catch up. No problem.
Okay, fair enough.
He's very advanced than the others.
Fair enough.
He's penny dropped that I was going.
Oh, I haven't seen it one time.
You just said it at the beginning. I would have agreed with you. I didn't hear you say.
I'm okay to back out and have you continue if you want.
EQ higher than anybody else here.
Okay.
IQ is not a moral thing.
No, EQ.
Oh, emotional intelligence.
Emotional.
Nice. Emotional quotient.
My girlfriend would say differently.
Your girlfriend, but I am the big nose. Thank you.
Cheers. So, okay. So I think you've given us sort of a cogent picture.
What, sorry?
Cogent.
Okay.
You've given an historical explanation.
Of why?
It seems to predicate on a political interpretation of this.
No,
which is about
that's how we take it.
Which I would take to be political.
That would be why Christians in the early first century weren't practicing this stuff. That's why.
So you don't think that you're making this is political. You don't think this is about how to arbitrate society with legislation for masses of people and tribes.
It's not simply just about politics.
It's
about religion more than anything. So we have the idea of covenants. in Christianity, Sharias, if you will, in Islam. The idea that like at different times for different peoples, God would make agreements. If they follow X number of activities or legislations that God has from his own nature outlined for them, he will reward them with victory, safety, and prosperity.
In and of itself,
so that's what you're seeing here.
That's not a totally crazy idea. However, I think it undervalues God, and I think it misconstrues God. I have real trouble construing a God who changes his mind. I find that very, very strange.
Excuse me, sir. Can you name one Christian who believes that today?
No, I'm asking.
There is no.
You know, he does.
There isn't a single Christian.
There is no.
Or he thinks they were fine.
There is no.
We'll find out one point of this.
For those people at that time, yes, it was.
Just imagine yourself.
There is no change. If I may as well, there is no changing of mind here.
Well, clearly there is.
Simply because God is exposing different aspects of his morality at different times and his judgment at different, and his morality and judgment. Because, for example, with the 10 Commandments, we say that comes exactly from God's morality, right? Now, what we are saying here is that just because God reveals to human beings at different times in our temporal reality different commandments, that is not a changing of a mind. And as an example, if a commander...
It may not be, but can you see that it may not be a totally stupid supposition to go, it seems at least on the surface like you might be changing your mind. Yeah?
Okay. If you are reading this from an outside point of view, without any kind of official training or indoctrination into how Christians actually interpret their text, it's important.
Oh, I have to be indoctrinated.
Yes, you do, because
I'm a
you
free-thinking
have
individual,
to.
And I align with the principle of consistency because it's common to all logical thought.
You wouldn't read Macbeth and think of it as a literal story.
No, it doesn't claim to be.
Okay.
This does.
It doesn't claim to be literal either, by the way. It doesn't say it anywhere.
Telling human beings how to behave, including burning girls alive. Yes?
Okay. But
and you apparently, correct me if I'm wrong, if you were back in that day, you would happily or you would willingly participate in burning a woman alive, yes?
Assuming that I was somebody who was outlined to perform that activity, if in the case...
Would do that.
Assuming that if I was somebody outlined to do that activity, yes, I would, because I would be following the direct command of God.
I'd love to applaud your transparency on that.
That's fine.
The question I just gave you, and you just went, you doubled down, and that's cool.
There's no problem with this, because it's a problem of progressive revelation. We understand that at different times, God reveals different things to human beings, that's all.
I think your audience can decide.
Can I ask them a question?
Go for it.
Because then, if you're saying it was right at one point, and providing that God's judgment, morality is always right, given the time, then it's not really wrong.
Okay. So
to look at it back.
So
the difference between axioms and heuristics, which is what we were talking about.
It's about how you understand. Well, sure, we can go for it.
I'm hunting for axioms. That's the
Who do you want me to answer first?
Okay, so my friend here.
Okay.
Dawood.
Okay. Oh, well, I'm David. Okay, that's interesting. So, Salam. So ultimately, when we are seeing the expositions here of God's law and it being transferred over to human beings and interpreted by high priests and by Moses himself, we are not seeing the complete essence of God's love and justice. We are simply seeing an aspect of it, very similar to the example I'm sure you've seen where a beam of white light passes into a prism and you see colors of the rainbow. The colors of the rainbow are not the white light, but they are how the white light is interpreted within the context of a prism. So God's... Exactly. Look at that. Great.
On the same page, but
awesome.
You're misconstruing what that means.
Well, that's for divine simplicity, but that's a different point. Ultimately, God's law or God's actual morality does not change. It is always the same. However, the manner in which it is applied at different points in time do change.
Okay.
The application changes.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's why Jesus Christ is important. In Him you have the fulfillment of the law. The purpose was to perfect the Israelites so that they will be capable of going out into the world and being a light to the Gentiles.
So it's political.
That is now completed in Jesus Christ, so we no longer need to abide by the laws of Moses in order to become perfected. That now happens with Christ himself.
Therefore, this is a political and tribal mandate. In both of your cases,
well, no, it's a covenantal.
A cultural framework, okay?
It's a covenantal framework.
When I'm hunting for axioms, which is what I'm always hunting for, the axiom only occurs at the level of the individual. I think the individual is the basic building block of realities, not for any political reasons, but because the soul, consciousness, qualia, whatever you want to call it, is generated at the individual level, it seems, okay? It's not generated by the collective, it's not generated by the tribe.
I don't know.
Okay, we don't know, I'm not saying it's sure, but it's a totally credible hypothesis.
Sorry, are you arguing for like human beings to be some kind of like primary cause for reality, or the individual human beings?
I'm saying individual souls are foundational in all of these discussions, and the individual foundation, the individual is the foundational building block of reality, yes.
No, I'd say God
More
is.
than the collective.
I'd say God is, personally, but
fine,
that's up to you.
Okay. But given God may well be entangled within this, but that's the whole point. I think the human consciousness is the closest to God-like we get. That's where God is most present.
I don't agree with that, but okay, go ahead.
Let me try and rephrase. That in the mystery of consciousness, I think that's where God touches us most. That's where the hand of God is most obvious and simultaneously most difficult to pin down, yeah? Within consciousness, within our feelings and within our choices, okay? That's where the action's happening. It's not happening in the matter and the energy, it's happening in consciousness and feelings and choices. Therefore, I take the individual to be the basic building block of reality. Ethics is about intent at the point of choice, and that only happens at the individual level. It doesn't happen at the collective level. The collective aggregates the individual choices after the event, but the actual ethics, so you're responsible for your choices, I'm responsible for mine, you're responsible for yours, and God will and should judge us. That seems to me also common to all religions. Okay? So I'm coming from that foundational axiom and trying to be consistent with it.
Why can't it be both, though?
I could, I'm happy to explore anything you want, but I'm really trying to go Occam's razor here. Okay?
Because if you do Occam's razor on religious texts, whether it's in the Bible or in the Quran or the texts that I know, it seems to be both. God speaks to the individual, but then God also speaks to the group of people.
That's not impossible. I personally think I favour the idea that God speaks to the individual, and that improves the individual, and it improves then the way the individual treats the collective, and the goodness of those choices naturally fans out into the politics. So I believe in the
But ultimately, goodness is something that isn't derived independent from God. Or do you believe it is?
I think goodness is in the fitra, which is the innate moral compass, which Muslims overtly refer to, and I think is implicit in all religions, including Christianity.
I don't think. Now, the Bible does talk about the words of God being written on the hearts of men. To refer to, like, for example, when the Gentiles do things that are the law without being aware of the law.
Okay. So just meditate on the fact you may have more common ground.
But unfortunately, when it comes to cultural relativism, we see that like different cultures have different fitras, if you want to say that.
A fitra only exists at the level of the individual. There isn't. This is why. I'll back up Christianity for a minute here.
Every individual.
The separation of politics and spirituality, which normally occurs in Christianity, or at least some strands of Christianity, I think is very, very wise. And the entanglement of politics and spirituality, which is more predominant in conservative Islam, I think is far more problematic. Okay? So I do believe in separation of church and state. Each individual is responsible for their conscience. And what's strange to me is that Muslims are attuned to this idea when they criticize Christians for original sin and the idea that Jesus could pay for our sins. In that, you reflect your understanding that I can't be responsible for somebody else's choice or vice versa, and yet entangling it in a political framework seems to contradict that instinct. So I think you're responsible for your soul, I'm responsible for mine, via our choices which are pivotal, all of us, and God, if there is one, will judge.
But you know, the separation of church and state was not an intellectual pursuit that happened in a vacuum. It wasn't that the king said, well, all of the Voltaire and all of you lot go into the room and then come up with something. It was something that sort of like history, being the driving force, drives this trend.
I understand, but it's a political and tribal trend, and I think within the tribe and the politics, you're speaking heuristics, you're not speaking axioms. You make general rules, Don't have sex until you're 18. You pick a number. You know that won't be actually true for each individual, but in order to make the collective operate, you pick a heuristic, and as long as you don't confuse your heuristics with your axioms, not a problem. But what can happen is, so I'll take the example of eating pork, which I think is one of the least offensive examples I could pick. To me, there was a heuristic which went back in the day eating pork was not a good idea because it was more toxic, and the Jews and the Muslims seem to there have had a political tribal law which went don't do it, good idea. But I think to then assume that was meant as an eternal axiom for each individual is to mix apples and pears. It was. I don't think there's anything in and of itself morally wrong with eating pork, and I think nowadays it's vetted and it's probably okay. So that would be an example of where, although the core merits of, say, Islam, in terms of the 5 pillars and fitra and niyyah, I stand by, some of the theology, some of the analysis, some of the theory, I think doesn't fit. But if I shed that idea of pork, would the whole religion collapse? No, absolutely not. Because it's in a hierarchy of value, and the key things are Christianity, servant of the man, and in Islam, the 5 pillars, niyyah, fitra. That's what I see. And if I look at it through that lens, you guys are very much on the same page.
Okay, but again,
obviously I disagree with that, and I think this is where we're going to have a conversation today later.
Okay, go for it. Carry on. Well, let me put it another way. You've got more common ground than you might appreciate.
I do agree.
Well, unfortunately not.
You do agree.
You can have as many common grounds as you'd like, but when fundamental
I think Jesus was all about common ground.
Sorry?
Jesus was all about having common ground.
Did you just read that verse from Matthew?
No, that's my interpretation.
Clearly he wasn't.
What Jesus' life is like.
Okay,
Even
can you
his enemies tell the other
have you ever read the Bible or the Gospels or any bit of it? Okay, well that verse you just picked up about the sword. Unfortunately, he wasn't about common ground. He was very much about having a delineation between his sheep and the goats.
Got it. Okay,
And assuming that also where it mentions that all judgment is given to the Son of Man, referring to himself, unfortunately is a criteria that appears to be evidence by which he will use to discern who is a true follower of his and who is not.
Okay.
And ultimately, many of his popular speeches were actually against the teachings of the Pharisees. He wasn't attempting to find common ground. He was coming here with the authority to establish what was ultimately true.
So it sounds
And
like
everything else was wrong,
it.
and what he was saying was right.
Okay,
So unfortunately, that's a poor interpretation of Jesus
So
Christ.
my reading of Jesus in John in particular, it's not that he was against the law or against what the Pharisees were trying to uphold. It was more the interpretation and the niyyah, the intention of the Pharisees, because they were using the law as a hammer to oppress people. And Jesus was like, you are so much focused about the letter of the law as opposed to the spirit of the law.
Spirit of the law.
And this is what he does. He does the
Yes,
We agree on that.
the spirit of the
We all
law.
agree on that point.
The spirit of the
good
law
to
is the
know.
mechanism of perfection.
Good. So we all agree the
That's
spirit
what it
of the law
is.
is very important. And therefore, if I inspect this text with an eye to its spirit, and I appreciate the principle of self-consistency, I say that if I was back in the day, I absolutely wouldn't burn a young girl alive. Every instinct I have says I wouldn't.
It wouldn't be your responsibility.
would, it's
You'd
my
be
choice.
given the charge to do so.
sorry.
For example, we know
That's the first really
that
crazy thing you've said.
the 12 tribes
That's what you just said.
all
You understand
contained-
what you just said? I
Yes.
make a moral choice, but it's not my responsibility.
No. As in, within the society that he had established, all
That's
12 tribes
political.
had different responsibilities. Most prominently the Levites, who could not participate in any kind of work, but simply would only participate in priestly duty. So unless you were of some tribe that actually was responsible for carrying this out, then no, you wouldn't be involved.
Okay. I think we can see clips when you want to say something.
No, I'm just saying because you said it's political, and obviously I don't know too much about it, so I'm not going to agree or disagree. But you say political.
I'm saying,
What-
in other words, it's about how you aggregate
I
behaviour
see.
between more than one person.
I agree, but
Yeah, that's all.
what's wrong with the politics in?
Nothing except because
Yeah.
I think ethics occurs at the intent at the point of choice. That can only happen at the level of the individual. That's when I make the choice, including the one to burn a woman alive, and that's when God, whether he, she, or it might be,
Partially.
judges me.
This is so
Or
super
my
important.
conscience,
though.
however abstract God may be, that's the ethical. So each man is in a sense an ethical island. Now you make the choices, God will judge you on them. If you're making good choices, they will fan out well for you and the community on a political level, and that's obviously what's wanted. So you want to create political heuristics, general rules, which align with the best ethical axioms.
But given the historicity of this, some of these acts could have created big issues on a communal level. If there was an individual who was sort of betraying the collective.
They could.
So the lady, the girl,
So going back in time, would you burn her?
No, but hold on. I need to first understand before I agree or disagree. But I'm saying, from what the brother was saying, is that if there was, and I want you to think about this, if there was a possibility that if the person who then starts to worship other gods, starts to then betray the Kuno and starts to give intel into information and
So it's not just that. Just to butt in for 1 second. It's not just about. No. I wanna expand here for a second. The idea isn't that they will start worshiping Molech and then start giving away information to the Midianites, for example.
There's more to this.
There's-
Because the Moabites,
Yeah.
the Moabites were in war with the Israelites.
Okay, so
That's
as far
Sorry, if you guys have got mics, just so I can represent my point fairly. So in terms of got mic as well.
I don't know whose mics these are.
Okay. Sorry.
I'm sure you can hear me because they're here after.
I wasn't finished, but you kind of.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to clarify. You can carry on absolutely. I just wanted to clarify that the problem here isn't just a political espionage. It's about corrupting the actual fundamental fabric of a society.
I understand. I was getting there.
Okay, go ahead.
See,
You want to come on camera? I just think.
What camera are you referring to?
Presumably this one and this one. I don't know.
Okay, I think I'm on that one.
Okay, fine.
And I'm also on that one. Please ask this individual to move it back one step if that's possible.
Okay, so I'll move it back. I just think.
Do your thing.
I don't know about you, if I'm watching the video, it's just better if I can see you talking.
Do your thing.
I was just naming as many examples as I could.
I was having a multi-faith dialogue. BRB. Yeah? No, you around for a little while?
No, not really. I just.
What's it now? You good? I'm good. You good? Alright, man.
You just mentioned just,
we're not.
right? You said it's not just that. Well, I was trying to name as many examples, and I was getting to.
Okay, my apologies. Just want to clarify
Stuff in the
that.
Old Testament.
Because we have examples of this all throughout the book of Judges, all throughout Isaiah and Ezekiel and Jeremiah. What happens when they go away from God due to following the ways of other nations? But that's fine. Carry on, please. Yeah, so it wasn't just political.
I take your point about it not being politically convenient to have people standing in the tribe and yelling against the tribe. But I'm committed to the idea that it's primarily about individual ethics, not collective ethics.
But what
so you've got to decide whether you want to trump the collective over the individual over the collective. And my rationale for picking the individual is because the ethical choice occurs only at the level of the individual. Also, I can't help noticing that this collectivist idea is extremely kind of postmodern. It's very much that the collective is the main thing. And most of you guys and
I'm not making that argument. I'm saying God's the main thing.
You're walking along a very similar path to a lot of people now who think in terms of identity politics and collectives. Now, I think a collective is a viable thing, and you've got to orchestrate it, and you want functional societies, but they are subservient to individual ethical
But
choice.
Tony, you speak. Again, let's put this all in context. One, we're talking about sort of like antiquity. It's a very long time ago. Then secondly, you talk about fitra, but then also part of fitra is the idea of living in a society. 3,000 years ago.
I don't think that's true.
No, of course.
Oh,
certainly is.
I think define what fitra is and show examples of fitra. I think it's very better. For me,
I'm
understanding.
saying it's an individual, a priori moral compass that we're all born with, yeah? And that should lead
I was cut off.
That's a problem.
I was cut off.
Okay.
3,000 years ago, as an individual living in the wilderness would have been almost none too impossible. You had to have something around you. You had to have people around you. This is how we understand to exist, to survive, just on a rudimental level. So this idea of individualism is a very modern understanding of the self, and it's a very new kid on the block.
I know how that could look to you, because I've reached the argument for individualism not politically. And most of the people here arguing individualism, they're doing it from a political standpoint or libertarianism. I loathe that stuff. I want to be clear. I'm doing it from a metaphysical stance where I think reality itself is embedded in consciousness, and consciousness is only generated at the level of the individual. Therefore, the individual is the basic building block of reality. Okay? Now, it's a cogent position. You may disagree with it, but you see how...
When you're done, I'll hop in for that one.
Tony, I'm doing it from a
this up.
sociological point of view, which leads into the metaphysical. So sociologically speaking, how human beings organize themselves has been this way. It's been in the collective, and I see blind spots sometimes when you talk about this individualistic way of existing, which is a very modern way of thinking.
You're saying that's not how I got there. You're right, it is modern, but that's not how I got there. I got there by a different route. I got by an old route, and it's in one sentence. Ethics is about intent, fitra, at the point of choice, and choice is only made by an individual.
Yeah.
That's my whole basis. If I'm
that's
wrong
the-
on that, I'll change my mind.
No, but
Okay.
that's just one
That's
side
my
to it.
So-
foundational assertion.
Huh?
Yeah.
And if you want to knock my foundational assertion, show me where I'm wrong.
So-
I've just shown you that historically, and the way human beings have organized themselves and continue to organize themselves has not just been that.
But
There's
I-
two sides to the
but
coin
I
how an individual interacts. Lavinas speaks
it
about
based on morals?
Please. Lavinas speaks of this. He speaks of the encountering of the face, meaning that you are a sharp nut to another person. You can't be moral.
You're now blocking the camera.
Okay,
Also,
are you
you
moral?
you can't be moral.
Are you moral?
if you're not
Which one of you
Hang on,
moral?
let
Which one of you
let
moral?
him. Paul's going to be different.
Well, I'm putting you a
If you
question.
want to come in a bit, fine, but for the second, because this is going reasonably well.
Yeah.
Because now it's come to the morality of.
I know, we're on it,
humanity.
we're on it.
Which one?
Well, let us please, for a minute, carry on. Okay?
So,
Yeah.
I'm trying to.
All of
a clear
this.
line between the individual and
all
the
of this, right?
Okay, go on.
Here's the issue with all of this, right? I come from the Christian perspective. Yes,
From a
ethical
you come
choice.
from a Christian.
There. Now, yes, ethical choice does operate on an individual basis, absolutely.
Thank you.
So, for example, ethical choice does occur of the absolutely, yes, right? And of course, groups are made of individuals, so
Really?
groups are made of individuals, so at certain points, there might be a case where a predominant individual idea can become a group-wide idea. Sure, whatever, right? That doesn't sound crazy to me.
How is that even possible?
There are
How do
times...
you define ethic anyway?
Huh?
What's ethic to you?
I'd love to talk to you
Because it bleeds into
after
law
now.
all these things.
Moral action, or whatever the case might be. But I think what he's trying to say here that I don't agree with is when he says, he makes the leap from saying that ethics happen on the individual basis and that reality is experienced via the individual conscience. Therefore, the individual is the basis for reality.
Yes.
I don't agree.
Thank you very
I
much.
don't agree with that portion because without the individual, reality would still carry on. Reality is not dependent upon people experiencing it. Reality is something that is potentially like a priori, if you want to say, or potentially even transcendent. It doesn't just rely on individual experience
At
to actually
that
be
point,
true.
Can I quote you something?
Now, when it
Answer my question.
here's the last one I don't like personally. Now, when he talks about individuals being responsible for their own choices, yes, sure, we believe this. However, when thinking about a God who is perfect, it takes the human also to be perfect in order to receive whatever kind of eternal reward that the perfect God is offering.
I don't know if that's
Okay?
moral.
That's how we interpret this. Now, you would need to then substantiate how, if you agree that God is perfect, to mean that God has no need for improvement, no need for changeability, and is absolute, then you would need to explain to me how then, if you believe in at least the Christian concept of heaven, how these individuals who make their own individual ethics are supposed to become so perfect that somehow they can be enjoined with God in eternity, as the Christians believe. Or unless you have a different perception of what happens when you die.
I think what you just said, you implied that I was arguing that ethics was a matter of personal preference.
Effectively it is.
Which is the kind of argument I might hear from Muslims as well, where they go, oh, you think ethics is just subjective? No, I don't.
It's
I
definitely
think
not
if you're
objective.
born as a point of fact with an inevitable moral compass, your ethics...
You need to prove that, right?
Well, I can't prove it. There's no way I can
So it's an assumption just because individuals born at different times, in different societies,
all assumptions. The question is how cogent...
all show different ethical values. So individuals born in different times and places all show different ethical values. I cannot say that there's some kind of innate set of ethical values that every human being is born with.
Well, it is the assumption of Islam that you are born with a moral compass.
Now, I think here's the problem.
And I think it's the assumption of Christianity as well. You even
There's
mentioned
a
a bit
problem.
where you said
It doesn't say you're born with a moral compass.
I think that's the issue. He doesn't quite get
it's
it.
to be synonymous with the moral.
I think you're making your own version of fitra. That's the problem.
Fitra means
Find common denominators.
fitra just means a natural disposition, meaning you're naturally inclined to believe.
That's what I mean. So you're not a blank slate.
But you
No,
don't.
but
clear blue water
listen
will
to
show
what
you,
he
But
said.
you don't come out of your mother's womb knowing slapping the neighbor is wrong, like that because the hadith,
Or causing pain in general is wrong.
No, but I think what you may come out with is something which goes, when I slap the neighbour, then I land with something, a level of empathy, which will then teach me what I did was wrong.
I can show you so many children who...
knowing, but I have the built-in mechanism, the radar, to go, oh, hang on, that didn't work.
Because the hadith,
I hope so.
the hadith where fitra occurs is actually about the opposite of what you're saying. It's saying that everyone is born with the inclination to believe in like this, like.
I don't mean believe God, I mean behave well.
That's not what fitra is.
I know, but
higher power.
I'm assuming not all this is as literal as it takes itself, but the common denominator is immoral conduct.
And then it says in the hadith is to believe in the higher power, and it's the parents who make them Christian, Jew, or whatever. So
environment.
Yeah, so it talks about this idea of like this social construct
So
that happens.
your
right
understanding
after.
of fitra is completely wrong, based on what he just said.
It's not completely wrong.
He's arguing for an inbuilt moral compass.
There is a difference between, because your interpretation of fitra is true.
Is what he just said. It's not to do with morality.
Articulating, I believe in that particular deity in that particular.
That's all it is. Yeah. Okay? So it's.
I'm trying to distill things down to common denominators, which seems to be.
But
I'm saying if I distill that down to the idea that, well, I think when people pray, for example, they are supplicating themselves, making themselves humble in the face of reality, because this is an accurate and truthful way to look at the world. In a day-to-day life where we're egotistical and we think we're the centre of reality.
Well, that's what you think.
Okay,
literally.
I think that's a problem in human nature, including my own, guiltily, right? That both of you guys have been wise enough to embrace a practice where occasionally you go, I'm going to stop being the centre of reality or think I'm the most important thing, and I'm just going to meditate for a minute on the fact there is a bigger picture, okay? I think that's psychologically healthy. I don't think it's a coincidence that religions across the world have taught people to do that because they're very psychologically insightful, which is what makes me think they may be divinely inspired, because they keep hitting these strong psychological notes. Fasting is an excellent practice. Going on pilgrimages is an excellent psychological practice. No, seriously, think about it. No, what do you mean? No?
Depends.
Okay, now I'll go back in the day.
Depends on a lot of things.
Okay, let me go back in the day and imagine your life back in the day.
Because people die on pilgrimages. I don't think that's a great thing.
No, that's what makes it interesting. So, back in the day, imagine, your life is, you get up, you work the field, 12 hours, you get when the sun goes down, wash, repeat. You're just a cog in a machine. Your life has no teleological meaning. Yeah?
I wouldn't say that. Okay. I would say the functions that you're providing in society.
Then comment on it, okay? Allow me to finish it. Okay. It may feel like you're just a cog in a machine, okay? But the religion gives you an opportunity just once in your life. You're going to go on a journey like Frodo in The Lord of the Rings. You're going to travel more than 10 miles beyond your village, which is the furthest you've ever been. You're going to see worlds you've only heard of. You're going to travel for ages. You're going to meet people you've never met. You might die in the process. It's going to be dangerous and risky. It's going to test you. Then when you arrive at this place, you're going to meet a whole lot of people who've done the same thing for the only time in their life, and you're going to compare your experience. And then you're going to go home and take that back to your community. I think psychologically that is profoundly astute, teleologically, and it's common to most religions. And I applaud both religions for chucking it in there.
I mean, look, okay, so I am not going to outright disagree with the entire point that you made, but I disagree with the idea concerning that if you are a farmer in the year 4000 BC and you do the same thing over and over again every day, that you lack theological, teleological.
I'll withdraw that assumption. I'm saying that I'm assuming that when I'm out on the quest, I will have more of a sense of teleology and meaning in my bones than when I'm doing the 9 to 5 repeating.
I would say that because in the year 4000 BC, it was quite important that you woke up and did your 12 hours for the survival of not only your family, but also your community.
I didn't say it wasn't, but...
I would say that gives far more teleological meaning than going on a trip.
Okay, fine. If you see it that way, I think you want both. I think both things are meaningful. Yeah. But in terms of encountering the unknown, I think when you're doing the 9 to 5, what you are in is a world of predictability. You know what's coming, and that can have a deadening effect. And when for a minute you go, now you really don't know what's coming. Now you're going to wake up different human instincts. That's very wise.
The thing that you just described is rife in the Israelite history. This idea of being enslaved and being moved all over. It's there. There is wisdom and power in
both of your religions. And
journeying.
If you want to spend half your time noticing your differences, go for it, and I will.
The differences are substantial.
Spend a little bit of time noticing your commonalities. No, I see Muslims down here who they do the practice, and you can see it's working for them. The theory may not be working as well, and I'd argue that with them, but in practice, they're diligent, they're polite, they're disciplined. They're more disciplined than most Christians about prayer.
Okay.
But that's not the taste of the truth. Okay, it's not the test of the truth. I'm just looking at the principle. Okay?
It will
But you
depend
have to
upon what
respect
sect you
a lot
look
of
at.
the individual
Allah of
Muslims who
Islam is
behave
not
like
the
that.
God of the
So,
Bible.
and you should, as a Christian, be able to empathize with that.
No, that is not what Christianity is about.
Well, that's not what your interpretation of Christianity is.
You
I
would
think
have
you're
to.
misinterpreting
You
it.
would have to show. I mean,
And I think the reason why you're incapable of doing that is because you're confusing political and the theological.
no.
Yes, you are.
I'm
Because-
taking the direct words of Jesus Christ.
No, but you're
So prayer shouldn't be something that you, for example, do in public, in the marketplace or in the market square. You shouldn't chant and repeat meaningless words like the Gentiles do. These are all the words of Jesus
You
Christ.
take all this stuff
If you
very, very literally.
if you want to pray, go home, close the door, and it's just you and God.
I think what matters is your
That's
intent
what
when
Christ
you
said.
pray thereafter.
Awesome,
Whether you do it is
because
irrelevant.
Christ
If
then
you're praying
said-
in public because you want to make a public show of
Christ
it,
said that,
that's
yes.
not the right moment
You've
to pray.
received your reward.
If you're praying
Yes.
in public
That was what the
because you
critique
want to
was, yeah,
pray,
that was
then
what the
that's
critique was.
fine.
It's not-
about motive.
It's not about the prayer.
And
It's about-
also about repeating meaningless words. So, for example, when it comes to the majority of Muslims, they don't speak Arabic, unfortunately, so they don't even know what they're saying when they pray.
What's the meaning?
Huh?
It's meaningless.
I don't know how you
so
know what's
things-
going on inside
things
all these
that-
individual Muslim
Do-
minds. That's amazing.
How many Muslims speak Arabic?
I don't know.
Okay, very small percentage, like 50% of all Muslims speak Arabic. It
But
doesn't
I care
matter.
about the intent. I actually don't care if they don't know any of the words. What I know is, I believe most of you in both religions have the intent. For a while, I'm going to be humble. For a while, I'm going to be reflective. For a while, I'm publicly not going to be standing around posturing. I'm going to be down on the ground, equal with everybody
Facing the
else.
ground, yeah.
Okay, it's symbolic.
Why
it's
can't you see
theatrical,
that?
and it's good psychology.
Because ultimately, every other religion does the exact same thing, and then Christ. I never saw, or we never have seen any exposition of Christ walking around and seeing Gentiles participating in an activity, and then he points at them and says, "You see that? That's great. You guys need to do more of that." Christ was here to separate the sheep from the goats. His way, or he is in fact the way. So whatever he does, whatever actions he participates in, are the ones as a Christian I will follow. Sure, you can have respect for other people performing some kind of activity where they're diligent and disciplined, but that stops there. There's nothing more to be taken from them than just that. Ultimately, the theology is completely backwards and wrong because they're following something that's
You and
false.
I are interpreting the nature of God very differently. I think the primary
Yes, we are. We are.
Okay, fine. But it's
Because
important.
your
If you don't
God is
agree
sort of
on-
made up, which is the issue.
Well, that's your critique of me. I would say in terms of the God I'm describing is primary, but his it.
Oh, great. Then you have genders
I'm
too.
keeping it vague because
Okay.
I'm just a little human being, and we're
Yeah.
talking about something beyond understanding.
I would
so
say
for me to
at the very-
presume that God is male seems really stupid.
It's simply a matter of language. God is not an actual male.
Which is why it's not a he, it's not an it, it's not a she, it's above and beyond.
But now what we have,
agree on that.
for example, within the Old Testament is that when it comes to at least poetry from the psalmist like David, God has no problem being called something like a mighty man of war, for example.
Okay. well,
God never chastises David for using that term, so that's fine.
assume everything in your book, or no offense, your book is literally the word of God, but I don't think it is. I think
I didn't make that claim. I said the psalmist. I said David, right? So when David used those words to describe God, there was no chastisement that followed.
Okay, I've tried to show bits of the Bible which I think are inconsistent.
I've already answered you.
No, you've answered
I've
four
already-
things.
Go on to the rest and answer them all. Go ahead.
No,
And
it's
it will
not-
be the same thing.
It doesn't matter. The four establish the point. The point is, you're in principle with this because although we've agreed...
Progressive revelation, different covenants.
Yeah, I know, okay,
There you go.
So, you're
But then-
framing it within a political context.
Nope,
I get
nope.
it.
Religious or theological, in fact.
You can't then ever criticize Muslims.
I can. Simple as this. Simple as this. This is where the criticism of Islam comes from. We've already had Christ. He has come here. We've already had John, the apostle, who we believe in Christianity, or at least in the Orthodox faith, was the last to receive divine revelation from God. Now, when we are all in the new covenants, where we can all achieve eternal life if we all follow Jesus Christ alone, there is no need for a Muhammad to come later or a Mani to come later, and they start twisting things that were already dealt with thousands of years before
But
he
it
was
goes
born.
against the foundation of Christianity.
No, it does.
early-
Now you're doing what he's doing. Okay, all right. All right, go for
You know
it.
what's interesting? Sorry. There's a certain humility. I think there's more humility in the way Dawood approaches this. I hope there's more humility. You seem absolutely
Perfect.
certain of
Yes.
everything.
Yes.
I think people who
So-
seem absolutely certain of things
I
are
cannot-
often not paying enough attention to the limits
I
of our
cannot say-
awareness, okay?
I cannot say that I'm absolutely certain of everything, But I have a high degree of confidence in Jesus Christ. That's my foundation.
You have more.
A high degree of confidence.
Okay, now I've got a fair chunk of. I've got confidence that Jesus Christ exemplifies the best that human nature is capable of, and therefore he sets a perfect example to follow. Okay?
Agreed. Now just read his words and see what that is. That's what I say.
I know, and I
Dawood, please, go ahead.
Sermon on the Mount, which keeps it really, really nice and simple, and there are things
I won't
in
interrupt.
this which clearly contradict that. Your go.
I'm just saying, if you look at the very early Christians,
Should we
the
move away
Jewish,
from it? Oh, we can't.
the Jewish sect that becomes Christianity at one point, a very important thing that they were worried about was how to upkeep the law within Jerusalem, and then how to apply it to the Gentiles. I mean, Paul is the apostle of the Gentiles, right? So you just said, I forgot my point.
There's no need for Muhammad.
Oh yeah. So yeah.
Okay, well, I mean,
Okay.
excellent. Let's just have a night.
Well, the point I'm just trying to make
Are
is
you the
that
cameraman?
No.
yeah. It's not my property, so I can't touch it.
I don't think they'd mind us moving it, but
I can just carry on.
okay, we'll try and carry on.
When I was in school, my teacher told me that Confucius just was Chinese. Oh! Sorry. Yep. I have no idea whose camera this is.
Exactly, the info.
When I was in... Huh? I think so. I think that the tripod is mine. I don't know whose phone it is though.
No, he moved the camera, that's why. But
That's fine.
anyway, he didn't fall down, he fall down on me.
All good, all good. All
Then
good.
say thank you, at
I
least.
love you, yeah, love you. I love you, yeah? Is that good enough?
Hello, Sami, how are you?
Follow Shaitan, follow God.
He's
Oh,
not
wait.
any shaitan.
You're disrespecting a Muslim prophet. That's the name.
When I was in...
May I try and restate?
Sorry, did he finish? Sorry.
Okay, if you can.
I forgot my point.
So,
No,
one second. I would like him to finish.
He doesn't want to.
Except, what, you don't want to. I'm trying to get my memory before you want.
Remembers his point.
Let me help him.
Because you made the
I
last-
said
you made the
that
last
there is no
round.
need for a Mani from the 2nd century or a Muhammad, because we all live in the New Covenant, and therefore,
That's what I wanted.
there you go.
You're blocking the camera.
Now I remember what I wanted to say.
I'll fix all that stuff for you, okay?
Yeah.
I'll move away.
You're blocking that.
Alrighty. There you go.
I remember what I wanted to say. So the early Christians were pretty much about the idea of following what Jesus left behind, and also pretty much about the idea of the laws of Moses. In fact, when Jesus walks around Jerusalem, one of the things that the people ask him is that what his attachment is to Moses in terms of law. So Paul, and this is why Paul is so distinctive, and this is why Paul is called back by the Council of Jerusalem, because Paul was going around, he was teaching people that there is some omission that you can practice. For example, the idea of not being circumcised and other things, right? So James calls him back and says, Paul, we've heard that you are teaching people something else that we know. So the point I'm trying to make is that you can see here clearly that is in order to follow Jesus, you have to even accept the covenant. The covenant is not something that is applicable. I know. The covenant is not applicable by default, and you find this continuously.
I want to give him one of your two, because now you've got two and you have three.
I don't know who these are
Just take it
for.
off and put it on.
Everyone can hear you guys. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. So continuously.
Well, yes, these are receivers.
So
So
you
just
find
me.
continuously in Jesus' mission, on his ministry, that there were a few points where he wasn't even willing to engage with, the Gentiles per se. I mean, that changes kind of throughout the times, but
Like when?
I mean, the lady that came to says,
Okay, fine, go ahead. The Canaanite woman.
yeah, she comes to
When he engages with her anyway, but okay, fine, go
no, but
ahead.
yeah, but I mean,
The one who cleaned his feet, who are we talking about?
No, that's when he was in the house of the Pharisee.
wanted to-
I'll cover it, but that's fine. I'll
the
cover it at the
lady who
end.
wanted healing
Her daughter
for her daughter.
was possessed.
Jesus initially
It does.
Jesus initially, didn't want to engage with her initially.
According to the story.
Yeah. And the reason why is because it's very entrenched in the Jewish tradition that the Jews are not necessarily interested in proselytizing their religion. In fact, they're even encouraged not to allow people to convert.
Okay.
But that changes when Jesus' apostles, beckon with him and ask him and plead with him to help that lady, and then he eventually does. But I think that there is a point to be made.
That's completely wrong.
That Jesus.
It was the opposite.
No. There is a point to be
I'll
made.
read it.
That Jesus initially refused. Right. So when he says now that this
That's completely
covenant,
wrong.
when he says this covenant, it's like
Covenants, yeah.
covenants. It's like it's just like a default position for everyone else. And I'm saying, well, it really isn't.
It is.
Before he responds, can I quickly respond? I need to make clear to you guys. I don't take this stuff to be nearly as literal as you do. I think what you've got is a bunch of anecdotal statements from 2,500 or 1,500 years ago. I assume there's a chunk of stuff in it that's just plain wrong.
No, but it's
So
about
I
the
don't feel
principle.
the same.
Show me
necessity.
something Christ said that was wrong. Let's do that.
Anything inconsistent.
Huh?
Tony.
Anything inconsistent.
Tell me
That's my
something.
test of consistency.
Tell me something then.
It's more
I
about
just
the
did
principle.
burning women alive is not consistent
Tony.
with treating other people the way you want to be treated yourself. That's very inconsistent.
Okay.
It was more about the principle than the story itself. It was about the principle.
Okay, fine.
Yeah. Right, go ahead. What was it?
Okay, I'll answer you second, I'll answer you first.
Yeah.
The story you just recited is wrong.
Yeah, just tell me why.
Okay,
may or may
simple. Do you want a summary or do you want the actual text? What do you want?
Tell me why I'm wrong.
Okay, the disciples were the ones who told her to go away. It wasn't Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
She came to Christ and then she said that my daughter's afflicted. And then Christ told her that gave her a parable of the
crumbs.
food for the children not being shared with the dogs. And then she responded back in saying that even some of the crumbs that fall from the table are there for the puppies. And then upon hearing this, Christ realizes that she understands what he's trying to convey. And then what does he tell her? Your daughter is healed.
Yeah.
That's all. When it came to
But hold on, before you fast forward.
no.
Before you fast
Here's
forward.
the important. I'm not fast forwarding. I'm not going to fast forward.
No, you are.
On
you
this
are.
same topic.
No, please.
Right, share the space with him. Let him go.
I'm not
fast forwarding because you're not.
I'm not going to fast forward.
No, is it
Okay.
not true that you just denied her first?
No, he didn't.
What do you mean you didn't?
Show me where he denied her. If this is in Matthew 15:21. Here.
So why?
Show me
why
where.
she,
Here.
Why is she arguing with
Find me
you?
the denial.
No, but why is she arguing with
Find me the denial on argument. Show me those two. It's not there. That's the issue. Your interpretation is completely wrong.
No.
There's no denial and there's no arguments. It is an exchange. That's all it is. That's why I was.
Can you see why not taking this stuff as literally as you guys do makes life far simpler?
So, for example,
I just don't have to engage
Christ
in this
says-
kind of small print.
Christ says that the food of the children
Allegedly.
do not go to the dogs.
Allegedly.
Right? Now, we are not saying that the entire population are children, and we're not saying that none is not a dogs. Those are not literal. So there's,
Even sure what we're
But
talking
why you not being honest?
On-
Why not being
We're
honest?
so deep.
go
it's
for
literal.
it. Go for it. Go for it. Go for it.
Then Jesus went thence and departed into the coast of Tyre.
Oh, sorry. I'm having
No,
you.
no, hold on. Let me
No,
read it.
wait, no, that's fine. I'm trying to give you like an easier version to read. This is KJV, which is like a little bit hard for those who haven't seen KJV before. Yeah.
Okay, and Jesus went away from there and withdrew to the district of Tyre and Sidon. And behold, a Canaanite woman from that region came and was crying,
Yep.
have mercy on me, O
Yep.
Lord, son of David. My daughter is severely
Yep.
oppressed of demons." But he did not answer her words.
Yep.
So why did he not answer her words?
Keep reading.
No, but I'm asking you.
Keep reading.
And his disciples came and begged him.
Yep.
That's what I said.
No. Keep reading.
Saying, send her away, for she is crying after us.
So you were wrong. You
I
said
wasn't.
that.
No.
You said
Yeah.
it's on camera. You said that they begged him to help her.
No, but hold on.
Opposite happens.
I wasn't wrong.
You were completely wrong.
No, it's not completely wrong. I did say that the disciples begged him.
To do what?
Yeah, hold on.
To help her.
Okay, there was a misunderstanding there.
No worries.
Are you ever uncertain about anything? Because I haven't seen it once.
I am certain about things that I know
Sorry.
that I have read
Then
multiple
I'll
times.
ask him again later.
Okay.
Okay. So then he answered to her.
Yes.
What did he
Parable.
say? I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel.
Yes.
But she came and knelt before him,
Yes.
saying, Lord, help me. And
Yep.
he answered, it's not it is not right to take the children's bread
Yep.
and throw it into the dogs.
Yep. And she said,
Yeah.
sorry, you've had,
Yeah.
straighten that down, yep.
She said, yes, Lord, yet even the dogs eat crumbs from their master's table.
Yes. And then,
Then Jesus answered, oh woman, great is your fear, be it done for you as you desire. And
bang. Do you see
No,
that?
but
So
hold on, it's
the
not-
entire understanding by Muslims is completely wrong.
No.
Sorry, different. Sorry, it's
No,
different.
completely wrong.
No, but,
May I give you an understanding or do you want to...
no, but
okay, fine.
yeah, let me just
Finish off?
obviously I'm reading
Okay,
it off,
okay.
I'm reading it.
Please
Yeah.
finish off,
Yeah.
and I will come and explain what this means.
So imagine this, yeah. There's someone.
Thank you for explaining this shit to me.
So
because
You're
imagine
welcome.
someone is on the floor because there was a knife attack, right?
There was a knife attack.
Yeah, imagine someone got stabbed.
Okay.
And then the ambulance comes,
Yeah.
right? And then the guy's like, "No, heal me up."
Yeah.
And the ambulance, before I heal you up, I'm gonna have to do some tricks and test your faith before you can. That would sound very ludicrous, right?
Yep.
That's his interpretation of the situation. You're saying basically that there was a lady who was in dire need of help, and Jesus immediately helped her. He didn't immediately help her. He was explaining to her.
That's
"Look,
not what I said.
no, but that's what I was saying.
You're wrong.
No, I was saying that he didn't immediately help her.
You
What was the
said...
reason why? It says this because I was not sent to the nation of Israel.
Nope.
Can I ask a really dumb layman's question?
So what's exactly happening?
You're wrong in your
Isn't,
interpretation, that's fine.
isn't this covered by, at some point, I believe, hello, Alex.
And I'll explain
If you
why.
want. Sorry. Isn't this covered by the fact at some point someone says to Jesus, who is my neighbour? And Jesus makes it clear, everybody is your neighbour.
Yes.
Problem solved, no?
Yes.
Why do I need to know more than that? If that axiom is true, I can carry it through all scenarios and I don't need to get diverted to the
I'm
source.
glad that you have more of a scope of the words of Jesus than some Muslims. That's why. Okay?
All you're doing is scoring points. Let's have
I'm
a
not,
conversation.
I am not scoring points. I'm simply saying why you simply understand about he
Let's
cannot.
Let's have a conversation.
I am going to do it now.
Yeah,
Would you like?
let's just have a conversation.
Would you like me to explain this?
You don't have to score points.
Have I done anything wrong to you so far?
No, I think you could behave better. That's what I'm trying to say.
Very well then. I can always improve. Anyway, do you want to know what this means?
You can give me your interpretation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ultimately, what you're seeing here is God testing somebody's faith.
Okay.
Right? Because I was going to show you an example with a Roman centurion who said something to Christ that didn't require his faith to be tested. But that's fine. We can go there in a second. She comes and simply just says, "Oh, son of David, help me. My daughter is besieged by demons and she's being oppressed." Right? Now the disciples, who are still, this is very early on by the way, in their walk with Christ, they find her annoying and then they don't even want to help her. So again, they are being prideful and not offering assistance to someone in need. Right? Then Christ says that he was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel, which is true, but so that he would make them a light to the Gentiles, right? And then this is him testing her faith, right? Because don't forget, she's a Canaanite woman, right? She's a Canaanite woman.
Yeah.
Now, upon hearing this, right, she still insists.
Yeah.
She knelt before him saying, and he answered.
I'm saying, why is she insisting?
Showcasing her faith.
No.
Just as when you believe and I believe that Allah or God can test us,
you give me
and
theology.
then we can still go.
Look, you give me
This is theology. This is Christology here.
No, you give me theology.
This is Christology.
You're saying have faith. I'm not saying that. I'm saying from a human level, why did she insist?
Because she had faith. That's why.
No, because she felt like what?
She had faith.
No, but why do you have to insist?
From my point of view, I lost track of this. To me,
we'll come back to you.
Okay,
we'll come back to you.
I need to be clear.
We'll come back to you.
I think this is all anecdotal evidence that I'm not compelled to take.
No, this is hermeneutics right here.
Talk as though this is scientific fact.
Well,
Seems to
again,
me like if you've got enough contradictions and it's creating. If you've got
now
general
scientific fact is how you interpret the reality. That's not a problem.
If you've got a general principle which encapsulates something, why do you need to keep retreating to the branches to get more confused? I want simple principles.
Because
God operates
the Bible.
Well,
that's very wrong because how would you prove the very complex observations that we see in reality?
Really?
Yes.
Right, you don't think like there are the universal constants at all who end up being very simple? Gravity and...
But gravity isn't simple because...
constant. Gravity, the law of
gravity... Oh, how you doing?
The axiom of height. You, sanity. Although there's sanity here as well.
Yeah, that's fine. Let's go.
Oh, my phone.
That's fine.
Wait, is that Shamsi punching somebody? Shams is always doing something crazy.
Shams it.
I can move here if you'd like.
People have been beating him into pointing recently.
Yeah, it's
Some guy come down.
Oh my goodness! There was a camera here. Is it?
I think it may have moved to here.
Oh, okay, that's fine. All right, I'm unconcerned.
We could just move the entire.
It doesn't matter where we go. The corner's crazy.
Is it?
Huh?
Do you want in on the West? We're actually having a good one. You might like that. We were having it. We have a three-way.
Huh?
You got a couple.
I think they're there or something.
He's been having a dialogue with
Dawood.
Oh yeah, with Dawood and myself. So it's been a three-way. It's been quite good, but this is.
I just ignore it. Like when I see it happening, I turn away from it. It's pointless.
Yeah, but the noise pollution.
Until it runs you over.
Huh?
Until it runs you over.
Hey, if I'll push back.
Let's put it on hold till Dawood gets back. Or I can look.
What's the topic? If you don't mind me asking?
There is no real topic.
Well, there was, and then it's moved down.
You think so?
Dawood and sorry, no,
And David.
David.
Yeah.
I'm not good with names. I did.
Neither am I. I stuck too.
Okay.
Yeah.
They've got into the small print of what a particular story about Jesus may or may not mean. Right. And I kind of pulled back because I'm interested in general principles and axioms, and I don't think you need to go to the branches of those. And I'm trying to assert that the essence of ethics is in individual choice, at the moment of individual choice, and that's more important than political stuff and tribal laws, which are heuristics. And that's a distinction, that's an important distinction.
So heuristics as in interpretations.
The heuristic tribal rules are never axioms, they're general rules of thumb. They're not always the case. Only at the level of the individual can you have an axiomic ethical.
And then what happens when you have a certain group claiming a divine moral ethics?
Look, they're going to be right or wrong to varying degrees, and you can inspect their assertions, scanning it firstly for self-consistency, and in relative to what you take to be the core tenets of whatever your beliefs are.
Which is subjective, ultimately, right?
Everything occurs within a subjective environment.
Right.
That doesn't mean everything is arbitrary at all.
Okay.
Okay.
I would say some objectivity is important, and so at least as a theist.
Objectivity is a function of being a subject. So that's what people miss. The only thing that can make an evaluation or a choice is a subject. Subject is a noun. Subjective and objective are adjectives, okay? Subjective and objective are stances that a subject adopts
And they have
to look
definitions.
at reality with hermeneutics, okay? So the language often gets confusing. People go, oh, that's just subjective. It's inevitably occurring within the subjective realm. And you're attempting to be as instinctively truthful while being objectively truthful as well. If you can sync your instincts to the objective data, you've probably got the best angle, yeah? If you're only going with your instincts but the objective data says differently, you're probably not
If you would like to
attention.
phrase it that way,
Sorry?
if you'd like to phrase it that same way, I would still hold that you need some kind of objective principle to govern reality.
I think objective principles hopefully do, and
Ultimately?
religion is revealing these.
Okay.
But I don't think you necessarily need divine command theory, that even if there is a God,
I
God
wouldn't
may be communicating them via a slightly different mechanism.
Sure, but he wouldn't be using multiple mechanisms that then intersect with each other in ways where they are contradictory.
We agree, and therefore when we see
So
contradictions...
all can be right.
no, they can't, exactly, which is
And
why
then-
I conclude that some of the things you
And
believe are
then
probably wrong.
the first thing here is then, how do you then decide amongst the grocery list of religions that you have with their different principles, how do you then decide which of the actions within the religion is then the one that you should follow?
Yep, that's the journey of the soul, it's a tough
As an
one.
example,
And my answer-
Muslims would say, for example, that you can have abortion up to either 40 or 120 days.
I know.
Christians would say 0.
I know.
Who's correct?
What do you think my answer is?
I'm slowly catching
We,
up.
we get the data, we assess the data, and then we pick who has the best hermeneutic and use that as the principle.
So you think my argument would be that?
Pretty much.
Simplistic.
Yep.
Okay, thanks. Well, then I guess you weren't paying as much attention to what I've been saying.
Prove me wrong.
I can't prove you wrong. I can reiterate what I've said that you didn't seem to land with. The first scan you could do for how
They're all going to go up this week.
cogent an idea is to scan its self-consistency. Everybody believes this, whether you're an atheist or a theist of all religions, is the underlying premise of all inferential logic using philosophy and science. We believe we live in a self-consistent universe, and when I'm presented with assertions which are contradictory, I have to assume I've misunderstood something because I have faith, and it is faith. I live in a monistic, self-consistent universe.
Name dropping.
So the first scan I can do
They'll
is
be going up
it
this week,
consistent?
the next 2 days.
Now, once I've scanned it and eliminated some things that aren't consistent, I'm still going to be left with a bunch of things when I'm then going to have to make what you might call almost subjective and instinctive choice. And at that point, I need to be as honest with myself as possible, sincere, kind of humble and objective. And at that point, I'm doing the best I can. And all God can expect from me is that I do the best I can.
Before we even get to the last 3 points,
is what I said roughly reasonable?
I would say there's one problem you have.
Go ahead.
How do you then determine what is consistent when you are seeing two different opposing views about abortion? What are you comparing it to for consistency?
The underlying axioms. So what you've got to do is create a hierarchy of key axioms.
How do you do this, and what do you decide goes to the top?
Because the most general truth is the most important. I think I'm quoting Poincaré, and I could get out the section I'm reading on it, and his theory about epistemology, about the most useful axioms are the ones which have most parsimony, and they apply to most data. So the axiom, what goes up must come down, actually a heuristic. The axiom of the law of gravity is an eternal principle. There are no exceptions. It applies everywhere in the world.
There are some, but...
We think, are there?
Yeah.
Oh, tell me more. You can digress.
In not every region of the world do things function the way they do on Earth in relation to gravity. There's even some theories that gravity might even cause bends in space-time that we don't...
The Earth is flat, but in terms of credibility...
No, even this is so credible.
You're saying the law of gravity,
this
which
is
is
from
something
Einstein.
like... The attraction between two objects is relative to the inverse relationship
the mass,
of their mass,
and yes,
the square
apparently
of the distance and the mass.
it functions differently in other parts of the universe.
Okay, it may or may not.
Yeah, which is an interesting thing.
I don't know what either of our qualifications in physics are. We need to dig deeper.
I don't think you need to have a qualification in physics to summarize an idea.
If the law...
Because if that was the case, then we couldn't talk about anything at all, because we have no qualifications in any of everything. And in any vocation that you might pursue, there's always a hierarchy to how much more deeply you can dive into the topic. So I would say that you can still make general assertions based on the information that you're aware of without being an expert.
I would agree. You can based on foundational consistency, yes. That's the whole way I do.
Okay.
So for example, I could go into a deep example, but I won't. I think the mainstream scientific community, I mean Nobel Prize winners, National Academy of Science, they would...
It's okay.
Sorry, you're shrugging them off.
Yep.
Your qualification of physicist being what?
So, again, this is an appeal to authority. You're saying that the only way in which somebody can divide the truth of the universe from a scientific lens is if they have a qualification.
No.
Okay.
I'm absolutely
so
not doing that.
Why?
We're both arguing for
why are you stating that there are
the
Nobel Prize winners who?
Why wouldn't I?
Why would you?
No.
Because you're appealing to authority.
Then the onus of proof at this point is on you. If I go, well, if I want to know about physics, I'll ask someone who's a physicist.
Okay.
The onus of proof is not on me as to why that's a logical thing to do.
Right, but then
why shouldn't I do this?
For example, that person might be a physicist. They might be very studied in the field, but they might not be very good at explaining things to someone who isn't also so well studied.
I'll find out once I've pursued them.
Okay.
I can't find that out until I pursue them.
Okay.
So I should still pursue them.
But that's one reason why even if you are to pursue them, you might not hear any relevant truth from it.
The question was, who should I pursue? And I can't find out they're not a good communicator until I pursue them, can I? So the objection you just made chronologically doesn't make sense. Once I pursue them, if I discover
it inevitably makes sense.
If they can't communicate data, when I discover that, I'll pull back. Either way, we're all laymen in most topics.
Sure thing. That's what I said. Yeah.
There we go. We have to choose.
But that doesn't stop us.
We have to choose who we're going to trust to some extent.
Sure thing.
Okay. I have to pick an expert. This is not me. This is not either of us using fatuous arguments from authority. It's us doing our best to pick the people we think are the reasonable authorities on a particular subject. I pick the people who can deliver on a topic. People who predictatively, they don't just describe the present to me, but they go, guess what? I'll tell you what will happen in the future. If you do A and B, that will happen. The guys who predict the future well, I give them some credibility. And within the world of physics, that would seem to be the physics community. I could be wrong, and they seem to be exemplified in the world of Nobel Prizes, etc.
Not sure if there's any Nobel Prize winners in the we predict the future environment, but okay, fair enough, in physics.
Sorry, what?
I'm not sure if there are any Nobel Prize winning future predictors in the physics community.
Then I think, what do you think the scientific method is? What do you think it consists of doing?
It doesn't involve anything to do with predicting the future. I know that much.
Okay, now
observation,
do you want to repeat that statement, please?
It doesn't contain anything. So the scientific method has nothing to do with predicting the future.
Wow.
Yep. Because if you were to define a scientific method, you wouldn't find predictions or a prophecy to be a component of it.
Okay, so if you...
So observing the present,
if you
actually,
use a
or the past.
scientific method, you wouldn't
No, if you
find
define it.
predicting the future
Nope,
to be part of
not
the method.
using it if you define it.
Sorry?
If you were to define the scientific method as to what it is mostly widely, at least in the Western context, agreed to be, the idea of observation, testability, repeatability, you wouldn't find anywhere in that definition that it's possible for you to predict the future as a core feature of the scientific method.
I think even as you're saying these words, you're probably realizing that you're digging yourself into... Finally, you're going to have to...
Go ahead then.
You're either going to have to
Just
do
show
a
me the
roundup
whole.
or retract.
Let's see.
Okay, define for me what you think deduction involves within the scientific method.
Deduction.
Yes.
That doesn't involve future knowledge of the future at all.
Really?
Yes. You start with you start with a series of predicates potentially, and then you walk through them one by one, and then see whether the ultimate conclusion is.
How do you see?
You see what the most consistent results are based upon a variety of factors, both fixed and variable.
And how do you do that?
It varies. Well, what are we talking about? Like
I'll tell you what I
botany,
think you do.
animals? What are we talking about?
What you do is formally called an experiment, and the method for an experiment is you write down a hypothesis.
Not always, but you know.
Okay, no, I'm really serious. This is scientific method. This is the inferential method. You go, I've made some observations about reality using induction. I've noticed I think it has some patterns. As you correctly say, you make certain assertions about the core principles in place, like self-consistency. And armed with those, you go, now I'm going to make a prediction using an experiment where I'll make a hypothesis that if I mix nitrogen plus glycerin over there, given my current understanding through induction of these things, I predict in the future it may blow up. Then you do the experiment in the future to test it empirically.
Now you're just using the term in the future.
Yes, that's when you do the test. You make a prediction on paper that can then be disproven. You say to somebody, if I've understood the axioms correctly, I predict this will happen. So, if I've understood the aerodynamics correctly, I predict that aeroplane up there will fly. And 300 people who stood on that thing are standing, risking their lives 3 miles above the earth because they trust that prediction. That, guess what, the tensile strength of the metal we've tested in the lab through predictions will hold, and the aerodynamics will keep it up, and the fuel integrity will. And these are all predictions which are tested through hypothesis and empirical experimentation. This is the scientific method, and it does involve predicting the future. It's not prophecy, it's prediction. Yeah, I know, prophecy is not in this mix, we're talking physics. It is predicting the future, because you think
you're not necessarily predicting the future, you're banking on an outcome. That's all it is. So ultimately, you're banking on an outcome. That's all it is. Predicting the future, at least from
probability that you've understood the axioms correctly.
So again, predicting the future, if you're doing it at some times, like as we know with the vast number of scientific discoveries that we've had, some of them end up in horrible accidents.
I never said they didn't.
So when you're predicting the future, unless you're doing it in an accurate manner, then ultimately the scientific method has nothing to do with predicting the future.
That's incredible. Okay,
yes.
Every an experiment can't fail, and again I'm quoting Percy, which I've done before. The function of an experiment is to state a hypothesis and then create a circumstance where you test that hypothesis as diligently as possible. The answer you get is not the point is it's yielding data. If you do the experiment accurately, you will make a prediction as to what will happen, and it will either confirm the hypothesis, which will increase the axiom, or it will disprove it.
But it has nothing to do with predicting the future.
You make the prediction in the hypothesis. You go, I hypothesize that if
you're not predicting the future, you're simply predicting an outcome.
That's a very subtle distinction.
Unless we are potentially like mixing the definition here. So, for example,
maybe we're getting our terminology right.
Predicting the future,
here's a clear scientific prediction.
Having foresight.
I predict that if I hit that billiard ball with this amount of force in that direction, it will travel that distance, hit another billiard ball and move it that direction in that, and that is a prediction. Can you agree that's a prediction?
It's a prediction.
Is that a prediction?
That can only be made in a stable environment.
Is that a prediction?
Because you could do it. You could do it somewhere where it was drier, warmer, whatever the case might be.
Do the experiment well. Are you making a prediction?
So
yes or
you're
no?
making a prediction, but you're not predicting the future. Because I could say you're going to explode in 4 seconds. That's a
He's
prediction.
actually conceded on camera.
No. You're making a prediction, but predicting the future is not essential for the scientific method.
then
That's the
number
one I
two-
said.
Excuse
I
me,
didn't
and
say
then number
predictions,
two-
I said prediction in the future.
Just to
That's what
wind
I
it
said.
back, he said, number one, the
I said
scientific
prediction
method
in
does
the
not
future,
involve
and I
prediction.
said prophecy as well.
And then number two, he then said you are making a prediction. You can draw your own
Nope.
conclusions.
All right,
I
Tony,
said the
do you
future.
want to
These
be
are
happy
basics.
or right? Sorry? Do you want to be happy or
Ideally
right?
both,
Oh,
but
you-
I think
Are we?
both.
Ideally both.
Okay.
I think
Which one
Do you?
more?
Sorry. Do you mind?
Sorry.
Wait.
'Cause I wanted to-
Let me.
Be as close to
Let me
the
wrap it
truth
up.
as possible.
Let me wrap it up. Let me wrap it up, and then you can take over. Okay. So, I don't agree with your universalist position because it doesn't yield any kind of actual way.
Back on universalism.
Yes.
Okay, that's a jump.
Do we move away?
Okay.
What are we on right now?
Okay, we were on scientific method objectivity and what constitutes concrete axioms, and I pointed out parsimoniousness and non-contradiction, okay? If you want to move back to the ethics issue, then let me ground it out quickly.
So
Right,
you run away from the example of if we have Christianity, again, it's about universalism, Christianity saying abortion, no way, from the very beginning, and Islam saying 40 days or 120, depending on which
did I
school you
run away
follow.
from that?
What's the answer? Who is correct?
Maybe neither of you.
Okay, awesome job. Great. So,
Or one of you. It would seem that the Muslim position on that particular topic would seem to align more with the scientific consensus at the moment.
Really?
Yes,
so the scientific consensus follows
at the moment.
That,
And I use consensus
according-
in the colloquial sense. I don't mean every scientist.
according to
I
the
mean-
Muslims, that the reason why it is okay to have an abortion up to 40 or 120 days is because that is when Allah sends angels to write down your destiny.
I don't believe.
And the scientific community is on par with this, yes?
I don't believe they've got the logic right, but I
Okay.
think they've got the conclusion.
The timing, right.
Okay, what they've done, I'm assuming that your position is the second, and if I'm wrong,
Yep,
correct.
conception, bam, life.
Right, okay,
Let's
so
go.
So your perception is the second the sperm hits the egg,
Yep.
a soul is present. Okay. Because I take, and maybe I'm wrong, consciousness and the soul to be kind of aspects of the same thing, indicative of the same thing, I think that what life occurs in the fullest sense when consciousness can occur, and the science suggests you need a certain level of central nervous system and neurology to accommodate consciousness. Therefore, it wouldn't make sense for consciousness to enter the child at the point the sperm hits the egg. It will happen further down
At
the
the
line
very
in the
least.
evolution of the fetus. Therefore, the Muslims would seem to be more on point because they wait until later, which is what our current abortion laws do. Now, maybe those laws are wrong, but our current abortion laws also go, we think at the initial point it's not a problem to have an abortion, but as time goes by, it becomes more and more critical. So in that sense,
If
on
a
that
baby,
point, the Muslims are more aligned with the science. yes?
and then here's where you get called out.
Am I wrong
So
about
you're-
that?
yes.
Am I wrong that they're more aligned with the science than you are?
Yes, you are, because the
So you're
Sunnis
saying the
have
science agrees that you should
simply
you
because
shouldn't
they have
an
the,
abortion after
a certain dating correct, and I believe the science even goes beyond 3 months.
Whatever it is, the
right?
point is,
The Muslims
and
are
the
not more
scientists-
aligned
the Muslims-
because they are relying on the idea of predestination being
I don't care about
sought
predestination.
out
I care on the
for the
date.
fetus beforehand.
I care on
Now,
no, you're ducking, sorry.
no,
The question
to answer
is-
your problem,
the question is
if
which
somebody is
no,
born
no, no, no,
and
no,
they
no.
don't have the ability
Share the
to
space.
have
You're not
cognitive
gonna shut me
ability,
down so far
I'm not shutting you
from
down.
now.
Here's
Yes,
your
you
problem.
are. No, I don't
Wait a
have problem
second.
yet until I've
Here's your
summarised
problem.
where we're at.
You have summarized.
You're not going to let me summarize where
Okay.
we're at. The conversation
Go,
could end.
go ahead and
You're doing
summarize
quite
it, but you shoot yourself in the foot.
Excellent.
Because now you're relying on cognitive ability
About claiming-
to be the thing.
It's about specifying a question very
Okay.
clearly. The question should be, which is closer to the truth? That the soul...
No,
enters-
which is correct. That's what I said.
You're
The
not
Christian
allowed to
position or
ask
Muslim
me a question.
position.
You're not allowed to ask me a question. It's important to phrase the question.
You're changing the question because you're running from it
I
because
am,
there is no
because
actual answer
you
for
don't seem to
it.
want to engage in it in good spirit. I'm trying to be meticulous.
Okay, so to summarize, you've simply just said that which one is correct is the one that backs up, that is backed by science.
And you can use small print to get out of it, so I'll rephrase the question.
Go ahead.
You can't use small print.
Go ahead.
Which,
Who's correct?
Which assessment is closer to the truth, according to...
No, who's correct? Because don't forget, you're arguing
Because if
from
I
a
ask
universal
it,
position.
If I
That's
ask
the
it
problem.
that way, then you can use small print to get out. I'm now going to make it that you can't run
So,
away by asking
ultimately-
which position is closer to the truth.
Okay.
And you don't like it phrased that way because
Here's
now
the
you're
issue.
cornered and you know,
No,
so
here's
let me finish the question.
here's the
Let me
issue.
finish the
Are
question.
you,
Let
how
me
do we
finish
get
the
to the
question.
truth of the matter?
You won't let
What
me
are you
finish
assuming the truth
question
is?
because
That's the
you know
problem.
I'm going to phrase the question in a way.
Phrase it how
This
you
is the
want,
second
and then we can clarify something else at the end.
The first time you contradicted
Because now
yourself,
you're
you
running.
said scientific method doesn't predict prediction. On camera,
Nope,
that was wrong.
prediction of the future. That's
Now,
what I said.
I'm going to re-ask the
Or
question.
prophecy, don't forget that.
Which analysis is closer to the truth?
That's my question.
According to
You're
the
running from it.
scientific community.
Oh, so now science determines the truth.
Can I phrase the question?
Okay, all right.
I'm not saying maybe science isn't, but if
Okay.
you value the scientific community the way you do when you use
Not for everything.
anesthetic, when you get an operation, when you go to the NHS.
Medical science,
it will-
sometimes,
you
but
do
not for
that.
everything.
Okay, so
For medical science, some things, but not for everything.
Medical science.
For some things, sure.
Main consensus seems to be
Okay.
that abortion currently it is which is closer to the truth. That the soul, that consciousness enters the body at the point the sperm hits the egg, or that the consciousness enters the body at some point further down the evolution of the fetus. Medical science seems to think the latter. You seem to think the former. Therefore, on that particular point, the Muslims are closer to aligning than you are. And if you, how can you be in denial
Medical
of this?
science, unfortunately, is not religious. It does not presuppose a soul.
Sorry, this is an analysis of
Okay.
neurology.
It
And
does
it's
not
reflected in the
presuppose
law
a soul.
on abortion.
It
I
does
said
not
I said
presuppose a
consciousness.
soul.
I said consciousness.
So
Play
again,
it back. I didn't say the soul. I did initially.
you said the soul.
And then I said
You
consciousness.
said both, actually.
No, the last time I asked it, because I'm being very careful with my language, I then said, if I say soul, it's more contentious. So I said consciousness.
Okay.
And the scientific community think it's more likely that consciousness enters the fetus.
Enters.
Okay, is activated.
Okay.
Good
Now,
question.
now,
becomes active in the
now,
fetus further down the
before
line to the
something,
point of conception.
before something
Do you
can become
deny?
activated, it has to be innate in some way. So it's
Really?
always there. It expresses itself at a different point in time,
Really?
but it is always there. For example, from the moment of conception,
Really?
the genetic building blocks for forming a human being,
Terrible example.
the genetic building blocks of forming a human being, your example isn't doing very well
Okay, so
either.
before I can activate the engine, the petrol in my engine, I have to start with a car which didn't have petrol in there, and then I have to put petrol in. So it's like saying,
No,
at
no,
what
because
point does the
no,
petrol enter the engine so
Bad
I can
example.
activate
Bad
it?
example. Because
Better example.
you're assuming that the consciousness enters within at some point in some
So I
kind
change
of
it to
metaphysical
activate.
way.
Pick a word,
Oh, awesome.
becomes
Activate.
synchronous
Great.
with.
So
Activate.
now
You like activate.
a better example would be
Activate.
when you're in a car that already has petrol inside. You cannot move it until you engage the engine.
Right, and
Right.
you believe
And
that-
there's
you believe
there's
the
some
car-
time.
right.
There's some time that occurs between you entering the car and engaging the engine.
metaphorically-
And in the same way, for the
We need
fetus,
to do a clock.
that's
we need to do a
that's fine. Sure.
We need to do
Sure.
a clock.
Can I just
All right.
something?
Yeah, go.
Before you talk about abortion and everything, what's the big issue here, the big problem is a good intention, okay? A blessing from God, whatever you do, you two.
Pray to your God, and then I hope He'll help you.
First of all, you have a very clean intention that you can look after this person and marry together means you have agreement. You have agreement no matter what between you. If it's happening, if it's something happening in your,
People don't live on if, madam.
You have to step to that. You cannot go back to it because you already have made a relationship between two persons. What do you expect? What do you expect if you have a relationship with this person? Obviously, you're going to end up. Probability will be.
So with respect, I've totally lost the thread of what we're talking about.
No, I'm just saying. that
Engage in good faith. That's all.
blessing,
I'm trying.
a
I'm
blessing.
genuinely not following the thread.
Can I just put one question to all of you? One simple question, please. And that's the end.
I'd like it. We're going to do one thing at a time.
Please.
Do you mind if? Sorry, can you repeat your point?
Okay.
What's the topic?
The topic is before you start doing anything, especially starting a relationship together with someone, you have to have an agreement between you and Allah, God. That means you have a good blessing. That means no matter what is going to happen to this person, if it's a pregnancy, will be pregnant or not pregnant, you will look after this person. Not killing abortion is haram.
Do you know what we're currently discussing?
Yeah.
What do you think we're discussing?
We were discussing about whether the fetus is still.
I'm discussing the point as to whether the Islamic view, as I understand it, or the Christian view that this gentleman takes, which isn't the only view, but the view he takes, is closer to that of the scientific mainstream, medical mainstream. And I think in this instance, Islam is closer. I'm not saying it's absolutely accurate, I'm not saying the logic is the same, but I'm saying insofar as you can differentiate a date, the scientific mainstream seem to say that consciousness, I didn't say the soul, consciousness becomes active in the fetus.
Has to be there first. Can enter.
At some point after conception, once the central nervous system and neurology started kicking in. Okay, so on that point, I think Islam is more aligned with the scientific consensus, whereas this gentleman's point of view is that well, I don't know if you think consciousness, you think the soul enters. Do you think consciousness enters at the moment the egg hits the?
Absolutely, and it develops over time.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. Well, we've got clear blue water, so we can agree then that whether you're right or you're wrong, because either of us could be and none of us knows for sure, it is factually accurate to say that the scientific mainstream more closely aligns with the Muslim view on this than with yours.
No.
Yes. I mean,
now, why is it okay to kill? Why is it okay to kill a human being who you don't perceive to have consciousness? Why is that okay?
I don't. You just jumped the shark.
Because that's ultimately the problem that you're going to face now.
But that's not the question we just addressed. The question was,
we're always facing what is the issue regarding if you're a universalist. And nope, it's all the same thing. If you're a universalist and then you have two different opinions between Christianity and Islam for a topic, sure thing. Ultimately, if you're, you can comment. If you're a universalist and then you believe that all religions in some capacity lead to the same truth about God, but somehow you have multiple religions that have multiple different factors and factoids about certain different actions and performances, like abortion. And you have Islam, where in Islam, depending on the school you follow, it can be 40 or 120 days. And in Christianity, the way they held you is that at conception, the soul is now joined permanently with the human body. Why would you then assume that one of them is right over the other? You say, assess the data. You say, let's build a pyramid and look at which one lines up closer with, for example, you choose science to be your objective truth mechanism, so go for it. Now, when you say that Islam is more in line with science, because science gives a period in which you can perform an abortion, sure, from that instance, they are the same.
Thank you. So you do concede that?
From the instance that they give a time period before you can legally kill somebody, sure thing. However, they have two completely different means by which to reach that conclusion.
I don't care about
in Islam, it's to do with the development of the fetus, and then in medical science, in medical science, is to do with the development of a fetus. In Islam, it's supposedly to do with the writing of your destiny. Yeah. Those two things are not congruent whatsoever, and just because, like you've been doing this entire time, you find a very high-level comparison between multiple things, that does not mean that they are the same. That does not mean they are both correct. That does not mean they are both right, morally, or medically, in that mindset. Now, lastly, the problem you're going to have is if you claim that consciousness is the determiner by which you can ascertain whether it's right or wrong to abort, kill a child, then you need to tell me what happens when a child is born and they have no consciousness because of some kind of defect. Can we then kill them on the spot? Yay or nay?
Okay, you just shotgunned out about 8 different questions and
do your thing.
No, I think give me one question that you want addressing, because you just gave about 8. And then when I then you can address
if you are a universalist and you claim that multiple religions can lead you to the same God, and then you have instances where those religions disagree on very fundamental things like the sanctity of life, and you have Islam and Christianity that give you two different conceptions of this, how do you then decide which one your God wants you to follow as a universalist?
Okay, the question seems to be, if I believe that all religions are speaking to the same core truths at heart, and yet they clearly have contradictions at the branch level, how do I reconcile that? And I'm slightly surprised, I'm glad you're asking me a question, it's a cool question, but we have covered this for quite some time. Clearly when I said I answered before, maybe you weren't paying attention, I consistently said, well, you can do certain prima facie scans, okay? You can look at the data and you can go, let's at least see if it's self-consistent. We can use the principle of self-consistency to eliminate some of the assertions. So I start with the assumption that none of these anecdotal stories from 1.5 or 2,000 years ago is necessarily the absolute truth. There may be truth in them, but I don't choose to take them literally because I don't break anecdotal evidence. I know, you take them literally because you seem to value anecdotal evidence way above what I do. I think anecdotal evidence is subservient to empirical evidence, and empirical evidence has to interact with inferential evidence, and that's how you get to make the predictions science does, which you initially claimed it doesn't do, but later you conceded it did. Play the tape back, you're still in denial. Yeah, you make a prediction in the future because you make a hypothesis and you use deduction and you frame it as an experiment, and we have covered all of this if you play the thing back. So, when there is a contradiction...
You're not even going to answer the question.
If there's a contradiction between any two ideas, I scan them for self-consistency. In this instance, you can shake your head and I'm telling you what I do, and in this instance, do you want to just make sarcastic noises in the background?
You're not answering the question.
Okay, so I
who's right?
Forget it. I'll just have it back and I'll just stand here and make sarcastic
noises. Go for it. Go for it. Go for it.
Okay?
Go for it. And I'll just keep talking.
Or you give me more time.
Ask you
no, I'll just walk off because if you're just going to be sarcastic and make tutting noises and be sarcastic...
Answer the question.
No,
you're going to run out of time.
I have addressed the question.
No, you haven't.
You interrupted me.
No, you haven't.
I'm not addressing
You didn't address the question.
Your viewers can decide whether or not I address the question.
Okay, fine, go for it.
You scan for self-consistencies, okay?
How?
Okay.
How do you do that?
How do you do that? Point by point basis. So the point that we pick. Wait, sorry, you interrupted me. Give me another minute.
No, you don't get another minute. It's my turn. So.
No, then I'm off.
That's fine.
You interrupted me.
No,
you asked me a question.
No, I didn't.
I was going to answer it.
What we have seen is that you.
It's on record.
By the way, sorry. It's this camera. Don't forget that mic.
And it's a shame because it went well.
Don't forget that.
It was better when Dawood was here.
Okay.
But he's sucking and diving.
All right.
So
that thing, by the way, is his. Let's get him. Right. So ultimately, your main problem here will be that you have no actual conception. That's fine. All right. Have a nice day, okay? You have no real conception, or my friend over there has no real conception over what God is. He believes in universalism.
One question. What is the reality of life?
I think, yeah, go take it. Yeah, if you want.
Share the space.
All right. You've got it. Yo, Tony. All right, cool. So. Yeah, he's gone. He ran away. So, yeah. So the ultimate problem here is as follows. If you're a universalist, aka you believe in the idea that all people have their own way to God, the example of the 7 blind men touching the elephant and then thinking that it would look like a tree or like a snake when they touch the leg and the tail, if that is your worldview and you believe that there are multiple ways to get to God, you're making a mistake. Because ultimately, like Tony just found out, you run into a problem where different worldviews, different conceptions of God start to contradict one another. When they do this, what do you then do? Tony's answer is to look at the data and assess for consistency. In order to have a consistent principle, you have to be comparing it to something that is more true or more absolute. So in the example that I gave, when it comes to abortion laws, in Christianity versus Islam, how do we then take the two, where Islam allows you to have an abortion between 40 and 120 days, because that is when it's believed that the angels will come and write your destiny, depending on what school you follow, and when Christians hold that it happens within conception, how do you then look at the two, assess the data, and then compare for inconsistency? What are you comparing it to? He referenced science, and because currently in the medical field, there is an idea or an assertion that there is a period in which you can actually perform an abortion before the necessary cognitive features and development occur within a fetus to categorize it as a living, independent human being, that Islam is then correct. And I tell him, why are you certain that what science says concerning the development of a fetus is correct with regards to conscience? And he kept using the term that at some point the conscience will enter the child. So he's talking about, he's using science as a principle when science denies metaphysics for the most part, and therefore he's using that metaphysical aspect of a soul at one point enjoining itself with a body as a means by which you can declare that it is then therefore correct in order for you to abort a fetus for a period of time before you can consider to be a human being. I think it's absolutely wrong. We believe, for example, in Christianity, that conception and the soul all occur at once. That at conception, the soul is permanently joined to the body. If you don't believe this, then you have to substantiate in some way which process the soul enters or develops within the body. I made the claim that if consciousness develops within the fetus, in the same way eyes, ears, nose, and the mouth do, then there is something innate to the fetus that allows for it to develop in the first place. It doesn't just enter at some point. A fetus doesn't just grow, arms don't enter a fetus at some point. Legs don't enter a fetus. They all emerge from the fetus due to its complex biological nature. And I believe that the soul and the consciousness is the same way. But he wasn't willing to admit that, and he wanted to score some points by talking about predictions in science. Ultimately, that is the problem with being a universalist. You can't sit on the fence, pick a side, and then roll with that. And my side, what I would recommend, pick the side of Christ. There you go. Who said if you harm any of these young ones, that you're better off throwing yourself, or tying a millstone around your neck and throwing yourself into the sea. There you go.
Thank you. Well done, David.
No worries.
Well done, David. Praise the Lord.